Today, I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Dave Ulrich back to the Digital HR Leaders podcast. Dave, welcome back to the show. I have the privilege of having you as a guest twice in 2025. We've had some wonderful feedback on the episode you appeared on, the first one of the year with Stacia Garr, where we discussed HR priorities and opportunities. Dave, you've been one of the leading visionaries in the field for as long as I can remember. And I'm sure you've seen how HR's role has changed over the years. When you reflect back on your career and how the field of HR has evolved, what do you think's changed, and what's making the role of HR arguably even more challenging than ever today?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me back. I enjoyed the session with Stacia. It was a wonderful opportunity to share some ideas and to learn with and from her. You know, if we think about change, we don't start from the inside, we start from the outside. The world around us is changing. If you go back 10 years, and I was thinking about that, David, what's happened in the last 10 years in the world around us? We've had military conflicts, we've had political elections, we've had social trends, we've had economic trends. All of those outside things create an incredible sense of uncertainty. Uncertainty is not new. VUCA was formed decades ago as a concept, but it seems like some of the pace of that has just picked up, especially around technology and political and social, because we have so much transparency. It's amazing how fast ideas will move. And I think back just 10 years ago. And then we've had the jolts, the pandemic. In all of that, what I think we've seen is in the world of uncertainty, HR matters more. There was some research done by one of a doctoral student a long time ago, and he said, does HR have more impact on business results? And the answer was bifurcated. A, in a world where the future is much the same as the present, not much, because we put in place a system and the system takes care of itself. It's self-sustaining. B, in a world that's changing, that the future is not predicted based on the past, HR has a huge impact. I think that finding from a long time ago is even more relevant today. We're seeing a lot of uncertainty. We're seeing a lot of movement. And in that movement, what we're seeing is HR becomes center stage. You know as well as I do, you talk to business leaders, not just HR leaders. This is not an HR issue. It's showing up at Davos. It's showing up at WOBE and the World Business Intelligence. It's showing up on regulation and government reports. People are paying attention to the human issues.
It does seem that I'm not sure if it's because I'm getting older, that things do seem to be happening much faster than they did 10 years ago, to your point, Dave. But there's and you're right, when you actually think back 10 years, so much has happened. Now, I suppose we could say the same between 2005 and 2015, but it seems a lot more has happened in the last decade than previously happened. And I think it's probably technology speeds things along as well, of course. So as you said, you can't, even if you want to avoid what's happening in the world around politics, for example, which we won't get into, of course, you can't avoid it because it's everywhere. Whereas, back in the day, you just didn't watch the television or read the newspapers and you'd be fine. But here it's everywhere.
Yeah, it's pervasive. I mean, in technology is an access to information. And so the information we've got, a tree falls in London and we hear about it in Buenos Aires. A tree falls in Buenos Aires, we hear about it in London. And suddenly the world is smaller in terms of some of those issues. And as a result of that, I think we just have to learn to respond. That our ability to respond becomes even more critical. And the responsibility in a company is around the HR issues, no question.
So you've always been a strong advocate that HR should be driving the business, not being driven by it. What do you feel stops HR from taking the lead? And maybe you can blend into that as well, perhaps, Dave. How can HR help organizations manage through periods of uncertainty?
I'm going to answer that in a funny way. I think one of the biggest challenges for HR taking the lead and fulfilling their opportunity that we've just talked about is changing the mindset. Imagine meeting with a group of HR people. You do it, I do it, David. It's a privilege. What's on your mind today? I love to ask the question when I teach a class. What's the biggest challenge you're facing in your job today? And I don't let people name a person. That would not be very politically correct. And they often put down, I'm trying to manage hybrid work. I'm trying to manage agility. I'm trying to manage mental health. And as I listen to those challenges, the thing that strikes me is the mindset of most of us in HR is what's on my plate today. And what do I have to do now? I think the biggest challenge is thinking broader about what we do. And so it's not about doing mental health, hybrid work, employee relations, employee experience. It's about using those sets of ideas to create value. So what I love to say to folks is put a "so that" behind it. Today I'm worried about employee experience. So that. Today I'm worried about hybrid work, where people work. So that. Today I'm worried about leadership development, culture, agility, whatever one of your hot topics is. Today I'm worried about analytics. So that. And the "so that" moves me to a dramatic place, because then the place is not about the HR activity, it's the outcome. And once we begin to get that mindset, I had a call recently with a group of HR people. All of their focus was on where they spend their time every day. Well, we need to look beyond that and to see more powerfully what we can be doing. I get excited about that. I get locked in as well to what's up, what's present, what's on my job today, rather than thinking outside in. What am I doing today that will create value for a stakeholder? That's the question.
It's just taking that step back sometimes, isn't it? I know when you kindly spoke to our Insight 222 group of clients in Colorado, I think it was about 18 months ago now, and you started off with the "so that." And I think there's some extremely bright people in the room. They're heads of people analytics in big global Fortune 100 firms, many of them. But I think it had a lot of impact. And I've had several conversations with some of the people that were there since, and they said that simple thing of saying "so that you suggested people think about has actually changed the way some of them work, as well, because it's so easy to get lost in the day to day, isn't it? That sometimes you need to put your head above the parapet and say, okay, well, why do I care about hybrid work? What's the impact I'm looking to have, the outcome I'm looking to affect for my organization or for our employees? And it helped. If anything, that should help motivate you if you can think of the right outcomes. That is, of course.
Yeah. It's so critical. And I think I get excited about our field. And David, you are a thought leader who I learned from, and I enjoyed being in Colorado with you. What a beautiful fall day we had. And even more fun was the session. I had an insight that how does HR change its mindset? And it's where we think. For example, in HR for years, and your work is classic of that. I see if you're watching this on video, there's your book on the shelf with Jonathan. It's such a great book. I strongly endorse it. We link HR with business results. So I'm going to do employee experience. What's going to be the financial impact? Return on capital employed, profitability. Here's the insight I've had this year, and it really bugs me that I didn't have it 5 years ago. Business results are a lag indicator. You don't report business results for next year. You report them for the last week, month, or quarter, or year. So what we've been teaching us in HR is be a lead indicator of a lag result. Well, that doesn't make sense. And so it hit me this year. What's the lead indicator of business results? What drives business results for the future, not the past? And it's not complicated. It's a customer. Will a customer buy more product? If yes, then the business result will follow. It's an investor. Will an investor have more confidence in your cost of capital, in your intangible value? If yes, the business results will follow. So where I think HR needs to change its mindset, become a lead indicator of the lead drivers of business results. Don't predict through HR what the business results should have been last year. Use HR to drive customer, investor, and community value so the business results next year will be higher. That mindset changes. And here's an application. We have a business meeting, lots of business meetings. HR's got an agenda. What are you focused on this year? And think of a PowerPoint, and it could be what we listed, and we could list a lot of things: leadership, employee experience, hybrid work, well-being, a whole bunch of important things. I think those are not the first 3 slides. I think the first slide is, here's our customers, why they're buying from us. Here's our investors, why they're investing in us, our cost of capital, our intangible value, our market value. Here's our community reputation. I'm in HR today. I'm here to drive those outcomes. I'm not here just to talk about work and HR work. I'm here to create those outcomes. So for me, the conversation of HR has fundamentally shifted. I call that stakeholder value. And here's the final aha with that logic. And I've talked too long and I know it. We may be off script already. We call ourselves human resources. It hit me also this year, which is a blinding obvious. Who are the humans in human resources? And everybody says, well, I'm here to take care of employees. True, that's a human being. Here's an obvious insight. The executives are human beings. I'm here to help them get their goals met of reaching strategy and financial results. The board of directors are human beings. I'm here to help them get their goals met of guiding the company. Here's an insight. A customer is a human being. I'm here to help that human being make a choice to use my product or service, not another. An investor is a human being. By the way, someday they may be agents, and we could debate that, but an investor is a human being. Why are they buying what I'm offering? And why are they giving us investments? The communities where we live and work are filled with citizens and human beings. So for me, the human in human resources are the stakeholders. And our job in HR is to be a lead promoter of the value they get. Now, that sounds really complicated because there's a whole bunch of lead and lag junk in there. The action item is so that the other action item is in every conversation, don't start with HR. HR is not about HR, it's creating stakeholder value. Okay, that's a diatribe. I'm sorry, but that's the agenda that I get excited about.
No, and I know we've spoken about that, in the last few weeks as well, Dave. And I think it's an agenda I think we can all get excited about. As you said, it's a change of mindset for most HR leaders and professionals, where maybe the stakeholders that we focused on pretty much exclusively up to now are employees or leaders, those within the organization. I think what you're saying there is think broader and think about those outside the organization, those stakeholders outside the organization. So if we think around maybe how practical terms in how HR professionals can change that mindset and become maybe a more of a truly strategic HR function, what does that look like? What guidance would you give to HR professionals and leaders listening around how they can do that and how they can actively shape business strategy in that respect as well?
I'm going to go back to a word I used before, David. Change the conversation. A, who you talk with. Am I an HR person spending time with customers, with investors? I remember a chief HR officer. We asked her, "What do you do what do you share with investors?" In her comment, this was very recent. I won't name the company. It was a large company. That's not my job. I don't meet with investors. And I'm going, then why do you exist? I mean, if the investor isn't getting value from what you're doing, that's a key stakeholder. So conversation, who we meet with, go to investors, go to investor calls, meet with investors, go visit with customers. I love to encourage HR professionals to go on customer visits, because what we say to the customer is, we're not just selling you a product or a service, we're building with you a relationship. Now that I sit with you as a customer, I can get a sense of what you value from us as a company. I'm going to hire, train, pay, organize, communicate. I'm going to do the HR systems that give you what you need. Begin to spend time with new people. That's conversation. And second, our conversations in HR, I think, are less about our activities and more about the outcomes. I said it before. We go to a meeting. We're going to talk about an HR leadership development program. Wonderful idea. So don't start with that. Customers are expecting us to be more innovative. Here's the evidence as I've spent time with my marketing people. They need us to be a more innovative company. Therefore, here's what we're going to build into our leadership program, because innovation matters. Or customers are saying right now in our marketplace, it's cost. We've got to drive costs down. Therefore, this is what we're going to do. And I think when we begin to get that outside in view, that's not just this strategic function. It's a value creation function. Here's the metaphor again, and I keep going back to the same message, trying to find new ways to say it. Strategy is a mirror. In the mirror of strategy, we do our job. Change the mirror to a window. Look through the strategy to the outside world and say, so who's the customer? Who's the investor? Who's the community? What's going on out there and competitor, so that we can begin to build what we do inside? And I can give one very quick example. I meet with business leaders periodically, quite often actually, and I say, I'm here to talk about culture. And immediately their eyes go, oh my gosh, here he is again. Bring a pet to work, have a good friend day. let me suggest to the business leaders 3 things. Take your cultural values that you've created to your best customers or your future customers. Ask them 3 questions. Number 1, are these the values you want us to be known for? We value collaboration. We value innovation. We value integrity. We value service. Almost always the customer will say, yeah, those are good. Question 2, what do we have to do in your eyes as the customer to show that we live them? What does service mean for you? What is collaboration? What is efficiency? What is innovation? And the customer defines the behavior, not an offsite with a management team. Question 1, are these the values you want us to be known for? What does that mean to you? And question 3, when we do those things, will you buy more from us? The business leaders in question 1, they go, that's interesting. Question 2, that's interesting. Question 3, you mean there's value in values? Yeah, if our values don't translate to you buying more from us, why do we have them? That's the mindset of HR outside in, of creating stakeholder value. And what I just described, an HR person could engage in that process and really begin to say, I'm now part of the business agenda. I'm not an afterthought. I'm not going to follow strategy. I'm going to shape the business with you. Will the customer buy more from us?
You'd think so, wouldn't you?
You'd hope so. By the way, if not, one of the funnest ones, I did this a number of years ago. Their number 1 value was to be the most profitable in the industry. Take that to a customer. Hi, my biggest goal is to be the profitable in my industry. And the customer is going to go, not on my watch. I mean, you're going to overcharge me every time you can. It also validates what we've got. And then it's the value of values. It's the so that. It's the conversation. All of those themes are around our job in HR is to deliver stakeholder value, to make our stakeholders better. And that will lead to the financial results that so many of us have written about.
And I guess if you think of an example that we can probably all relate to, people listening as well, if you happen to be an HR leader in a retail company, for example, you may go and visit some of your top performing branches just to understand the employee experience and ways that we can improve the employee experience to potentially keep people in the business longer. But as you said, it's just a slight change of mindset and thinking broader, isn't it? Think, okay, well, if you're going to the retail store, there's going to be customers in there as well. And understanding the dynamic between the employee experience and the customer experience will probably help you to move the levers that are actually going to have a benefit on both of those stakeholders.
Absolutely. And often the correlation between employee experience and customer experience is 0.6 to 0.8. And the employee experience is often a lead indicator. Mm-hmm. I love retail. One of the most brilliant senior HR leaders went into a retail chain, doesn't matter what chain, and she was going to do a leadership training program. So she was going to ask for $500K to build leadership training. That's a lot of money, but a high-end program. She didn't start there. She said, I've done my homework. The average basket size of women of shoppers, often women, is 40. In stores where we have a higher employee index, whatever you want to call that, morale, productivity, we get indices, it's 48. There's a 20% increase in basket size based on what happens with the employees in a store. We did 100 billion pick a number. We did $1 billion last year. 20% is 200 million. I'm not here to do a leadership training program. I want a part of the 200 million. And they said, well, we don't believe your numbers. She said, good, cut it in half. I'm going to drive 100 million in revenue because I can show you the basket size. It was interesting. This was a big company. She didn't get $500,000. This was a huge company. It was one of the large retailers. She didn't get 500,000. She got $1 billion. The executive said, this is worth 100 billion. We'll give you $1 billion. Take the risk. That's the mindset, David. I am so excited when I see those kinds of ideas because it changes the game. I saw this head of HR a few months ago, and she said, the first year I got $1 billion. The second year I got $1.5 billion because I showed the executives the value that we get when we create more employee engagement in basket size. Now, that mindset, I think, can show up all over. I'm delighted you used retail as a case study. My job in HR is to get the customers to buy more. The fascinating question, where do you spend the billion? I'd love to ask you that. You just got a whole bunch of money. You won the lottery. You won the HR lottery.
Yeah.
Where are you going to spend the money? That was your question to me. That, for me, is a fascinating question. It gets into analytics. That's where the analytics today is going to really move the needle. Because if you can show value to customer and investor, the other benefit she got is her intangible price earnings value, which is the investors valuing the future of your company, went up because they were investing in their people in a more effective way. And the investors bought it. So now she's not only affecting revenue, basket size, she's affecting stock price with price earnings value. And then she says, so where do I spend it? To me, that's a fascinating question. This is the new world of HR. It's the analytics work you and others do so well, but I get very excited about it.
Yeah, and I think, as you said, that really is changing your mindset. But the impact of doing so and asking the right questions, and as you said, where do I spend that money? I guess you spend that money where you're going to get the biggest return, like anyone else, other business leader.
Well, that's not complicated. Where, and here's the example. So I've got all this money. Am I going to spend it on employee engagement work? Am I going to spend it on learning training programs? Am I going to spend upgrade performance management? Am I going to spend it on benefits? Am I going to spend it on compensation? And now we get into the analytics of the future. Knowing I was going to talk to you, I decided this is scary that I do this. I went on AI and I said, what are the major metrics for HR today? And I got a list. It's such a cool list. Headcount, turnover, diversity, cost of the workforce, compensation, layers, engagement, learning. Those are all great measures. But my question is, so that, how will those measures drive outcomes? I think the next question you're likely to ask is, how do we begin to get the right measures? And to me, the measures are not the activity. The measures are which activities are going to drive the most outcomes. So for this CHRO, look at all these things I could do. Where should I invest to get the biggest bang for my buck? What a great question. That's the metrics that I hope we're going to be looking at.
And I think your AI did predict the next question, because it literally was that question pretty much. So just to kind of frame it, and like you, I'm fortunate to speak to chief people officers and heads of people analytics in particular in the work we do at Insight 222. And as you said, that is the challenge. How do we move from activity-based metrics to rear view mirror, if you want to call them rear view mirror, to measuring outcomes that drive business success? So you've mentioned some of the leading. Let's talk about them. What are some of the lead indicators that HR should focus on beyond the traditional ones that you've just reeled off there, to demonstrate its impact on customer satisfaction and investor confidence?
For me, the first question is prioritization. I think we see a host of HR initiatives coming out. And I'm going to reinforce again, because I think if somebody listens to this, what I hope they get the most is your mindset. I've listened to your podcast, and I was going to go back and listen to a lot of your podcasts with brilliant folks. You interview the best of the best, and do a little bit of a content analysis. If I had it, I'd have AI do it. What percent of time did the people you interview talk about their customer as the outside customer, their investor, their ability to form strategy? When I listen to some of your podcasts, I'm just listening and going, wow, that was interesting. They're doing some great work on performance review. They're doing great work on accountability. I don't see us making that bridge as much as we can. So what does that mean for analytics? Where I think analytics are going to go is in correlations and predictions. We just did one. I'm focused today on employee engagement. That leads to mental health. That leads to flexible work. We've written lately about the importance of hope and how do you build hope into the organization so that customer engagement goes up. So here's the analytic I want to look at. Not a mean, how much did you provide hope to the employee, but a correlation. How much did the hope you provided to employee correlate with customer engagement in your company? And so I think some of the analytics are going to be much more around the impact of what we do on the outcomes for the customer. And when we begin to look and leave means alone for a minute and focus on correlations and regressions and impact, the cause effect is always fuzzy, but there generally is some cause and effect. If I do this with employees, here's what I'm going to see. That's the stuff I hope starts to show up in our analytics, that we're not just measuring activity. Now, I have to say one other thing about the danger of analytics today, since you're the analytics expert. It's my passion. The other insight that was flashing the obvious. We love to report means. Here's our mean score on performance appraisal, employee engagement, leadership development. We get a mean of 3. Well, what does that mean? The mean is a mean thing. That's a quote from one of my friends. Here's the danger. It's a mean of 3. What were the respondents? 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, a mean of 3. What were the respondents? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, a mean of 3. One of the things I want to see in analytics is looking at variation. Because if we only look at the mean, we don't really understand what's going on. The first mean of 3 with all threes says, my job in HR is to be as good as everybody else. There's no variation in the field. The mean of 3 with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 says, I want to be a 5 and I have a variance higher than somebody else. That's called differentiation. In business, we win by differentiating our products. In HR, we should win by differentiating our HR practices. So the measures I look at, regressions, correlations to predict outcomes, variance, where I can differentiate. Now, the other measure of activity, if I were now, so what does that do with my calendar? Participation, how much time do I spend with customers? Either with them personally or with marketing people. How much time do I spend with investors? Am I spending my calendar with the people that will be the lead drivers of the outcomes I care about? So that's, I've given you, I think we'll continue to have benchmarks around turnover, benchmarks around diversity. For example, I think sometimes the diversity agenda, I may get in trouble with this, but I'll walk into it, gets misplaced. Diversity is variance. We want diversity. We want variance. Why? So that we can create better products for our customers. And if we start by saying, my customers are all over the map, how do I begin to create products that all over that customer variance will work? Well, I need people with different backgrounds. I need people who come from different geographies, different training, different schools, different races, different ages, so that collectively, our variance and diversity creates better products. And the investors will see the benefit. That's the agenda that so excites me, that analytics is not about means and scorecards. It's about prioritization, regressions, predictions, and differentiation.
And everything you said there, Dave, particularly thinking about the outcomes, the business outcomes that you want to impact, whether they're for customers, whether they're investors, whether they're other business outcomes. What that suggests that we need to do as well in HR is we need to collaborate more with our peers in the business. So marketing is the example you gave around the customer. We need to work more closely with marketing, because it's all very well understanding what employee engagement is, but if we want to understand how it correlates with other business outcomes like customer engagement, for example, let's just pick one that we all know about, you're going to have to get those two data sets together, and you're going to need to understand what that, and you need to ask questions around that as well with people who really understand that deeply. And that's when you potentially get executives excited if you find a link, and suddenly the impact that you can have as an HR professional is scaled significantly.
Oh, and I mean, let's stay in the marketing domain. Advertising. A company spends $10 million on social media advertising, and they're trying to build a brand. One of the things we've argued with the 4 largest ad agencies, and they've not all bought this yet. By the way, what we're talking today is about what's next, not what's always here. You spend $10 million on advertising. You're building a brand, you're building an identity. Why not spend 5 to 10% of that on leadership development? So that what you're promising the customer through your social media, your ads, your promotions, we're promising customers innovation. We're promising customers cost. We're promising a great experience. That's what we're going to train our leaders to do. So if the advertising agency is connected with the learning and development team, our learning and development team and the ad agency go together. So in the learning and development workshop, we bring in the ad agency. And they start saying, here's what we're getting customers to see about our products and services. You're going to build that into leadership behavior. And then you can take the next extension. We're going to build it into talent acquisition, promotion, performance management. Suddenly you get a line of sight between that external value and the internal actions in HR.
I think what you're when I listen to what you're saying, Dave, is you're saying HR professionals need to be better business professionals.
No question.
There's all very well being an expert in leadership and development or learning or even people analytics, but you need to be a strong business executive and business leader as well.
No question. And business leaders need to be sensitive to HR.
Of course.
It goes both ways. This is not a distinct set of skills. It's I in HR. There was a post on LinkedIn a number of years ago, and maybe a year or two ago, and you may have seen it. It had 3 women, brilliantly dressed professionals who all happen to be in HR. And the query was, when you see these 3 women, what do you see? Do you see women? Do you see HR? My comment was, and I knew these women, these are women you've had on your podcast. I won't name them because I'll leave off so many who would also be qualified. I see 3 great business executives. That's my top. I'll get emotional. If I had to invest money in a startup company and one of these 3 women started it, you got it. I even go to David Green, my friend, and say, invest with me, because these are 3 great executives. They're not gender-based. They're not function-based. They're not age-based. They're good business executives. And that's the mindset I hope we in HR can begin to have about ourselves.
No, I agree. You mentioned AI, and certainly maybe one of the big factors in the last 10 years has been the rapid rise of technology. And now we're seeing increasingly AI in HR as well. I do wonder if there's a risk that we could become overly dependent on some of these tools that help us, as you said, summarize what's happened. It's already gone. And do not give us accurate insights on where we should go. Where we should go next. I'd love to hear your thoughts on, and I know it's something you've studied and again linked it very much to a business perspective, which I think is good for those of us in the field. Love to hear your thoughts on using and maybe not using AI in HR.
Let me tell a story that happened this week. I'm working with a company that does meat processing. So they have meat processing plants around the world. They want to find out what are the skills of a manager of a meat processing plant in Brazil, in Sri Lanka, anywhere in the world. So they go on AI and say, what are the skills? And we're getting better at queries because we're asking better questions. And they get a list. And when I met with them, they said, look, these are the skills of a manager in a meat processing plant. And I said, what are you going to do with it? And they said, well, we're going to build training around it, compensation around it. I said, don't go there. And here's a simple question. What % of your competitors have done the same thing? Every one of them. What AI does is it gives us homogeneous, similar data. It does. That's the mean. 33333. You're not going to differentiate with AI because everybody's using AI. We all go to the workshops, and the winners in that argument are the people that build the AI tools. I said, use AI to get a benchmark of what everyone else has done. And then back to the variance. Now you put human wisdom around it and differentiate. What will the plant managers in our plants do that are different so that he or she can differentiate in the marketplace with our customers in a unique way? I think AI is an incredible tool for summarizing what's been done. It's a risky tool when you base decisions on past, not on the future. And also, I think it makes us a little bit sometimes lazy. I'm admitting I was lazy with you. I went online and said, what are the most common tools for measuring HR? I was a little lazy. I probably could have come up with some of them. But I look at those and I go, good. Everyone who does an AI query is going to get the same list. If I'm in a company wanting to differentiate with a customer or an investor, I've got to be able to figure out what's unique about me. What's my brand that's different? And then AI becomes a very useful tool. It becomes a very useful tool. Now, there's other uses for AI. One example I think we're going to see, and I'm consumed with it because I've been thinking about the theory of variance, and I couldn't find one, so I was trying to create a theory of variance. The importance of variance is we love to use AI to find the same. We love to use our skill set to find different. Here's an example again, another example. A professor friend of mine teaches sociology. She now has students turn in 2 papers. Paper 1 is the AI paper. What are the social demographics that affect marriage rates in Europe? What are the political consequences of a conservative movement around the world? Turn in your AI paper. And then turn in your paper. If your paper doesn't add to what the AI paper had, there's no variance, and you haven't succeeded. I kind of get excited about that. AI is an incredible provider of information that tells me what's been done. It doesn't give me insights about what we should be doing as we go forward.
That's really interesting. I mean, the promise of AI, if we listen to some of the consultants and the technology vendors out there, as it reflects HR, is that it will potentially take out a lot of the repetitive
Absolutely.
work that maybe some HR professionals listening to this are doing and maybe don't particularly enjoy, and arguably frees them up to do more strategic work, which I guess connects to what you've been talking about before. I mean, again, if you're whether you're a chief people officer who's been asked by your CEO to infuse AI into HR, or if you're an HR professional who's been asked by your chief people officer to infuse AI into HR, what sort of guidance? What guidance would you give to them?
I would say there's 4 stages of AI use. The first is an assistant, and you just talked about it. I don't need to go do all that research. I don't need research assistants. AI is a data source. Second is information. It allows me to get information that's really helpful. And I think that's where 70-80% of AI is today. AI's the HR, the agents are really good assistants in terms of doing work, the skills necessary of a manager. They give me information. There's some great knowledge databases that you can source, either ChatGPT or Atlas or others that you can source, Galileo that you can source. But then you got to go to stage 3, which is guidance. How do I know where I should focus? Back to my question in retail. I just got a lot of money. Where should I focus? And it isn't just a warm feeling. Oh, I feel really good today about performance reviews, or I feel really good about training. Am I getting data? I think what AI is going to do is it's going to supplement multi-rater surveys. If I look at the analytics that you report every month so brilliantly, I need to plug your stuff because it's so good. What percent of those studies are done on surveys? Many of them. I think we're going to see AI beginning to scrape data, both internal data, external data, the behavioral data, and say, this is now given AI's access to data where you should focus that investment to deliver value for customers. I think we're going to start seeing some of that. We're going to see some HR agents to begin to prioritize based on AI data. So it's not just a survey perceptual data, it's AI data based on outcomes. And ultimately, the next stage is when that guidance occurs, we're going to measure ourselves by impact. Did, in fact, customers buy more? Did we gain customer share? Did, in fact, investors give us a higher price earnings ratio? Did we provide value through those AI insights from scraping data? It's really funny. I haven't shared this. The first book I ever wrote, I was a doctoral student and we were doing work for the military decades ago. We had to write a book on survey design because the military in the US was doing surveys. I said, could you do a handbook? I can't find it. It was about 50 pages. I would look for it the other day. What are the keys to survey? The items, the questions, the rankings. Today, I think survey design is gone. And we know how to do that. I think we need to go the next step, which is AI accessed information that we can scrape, both inside information, outside information, and let the data tell us where we should focus to prioritize.
It's back to what we said earlier, really, as well. I mean, I know a lot of most of the companies that we work with at Insight 222, they look at employee listening. They've gone from the traditional survey, on whatever scale, 1 to 5, 1 to 7, whatever. And obviously they're asking lots of text-based questions now. And the technology, the AI, the machine learning is giving the opportunity to analyze that information very quickly.
Oh, yeah.
And they're getting richer information. And again, if we can connect that to customer outcomes, for example, then we can really help our organizations move forward. I don't know if that's something you're seeing.
I'm seeing, and it's still in the experimental stage. I mean, one of the things I like, David, about your work, and I hope our work, is we're looking at the next hill to climb, not the last one. Let's not do better surveys. Let's do this kind of work better so that we can, what's the internal information a company can scrape? We can scrape board minutes. We can scrape executive minutes. We can scrape earnings calls. We can scrape learning and training programs. We can even scrape internal communications, tweets, emails, whatever tool we got. And by the way, AI's capacity to scrape massive amounts of data. So instead of saying, how does the boss relate to you? I can now go through all of the formal interactions on data, and I can even tape meetings. We've got some technology. I can now give the boss a score. How well does she or he engage with their employees? And then I can correlate that back to correlations as the analytics. When we have a business unit where the boss better does engagement with his or her employees, this is the impact on our customers of that unit. So suddenly I'm now beginning to get some really prolific and profound prioritization and data about where to focus. I love the future of AI. I wish I was more, well, let me just be honest. I'm not technically gifted in all the details, but I'm glad there are people out there who are, because if we can frame their connection and their skills, we can, I think, really help use information to make better decisions.
So as we sort of move to the last few questions, Dave, again, you've talked to this a little bit, but again, for us, maybe again, a lot of the people listening to this episode, they're not HR leaders today, but maybe they aspire to be an HR leader, maybe a chief people officer in the future. What do you believe are the most critical skills and mindsets they need to develop to play a strategic role in shaping the business?
I love this question because on LinkedIn, sometimes you have people say, here's the skills, what do you think? And we get a survey of 50 people. That, by the way, is also a danger of AI because AI will see that survey. We actually have done research. Now, it's survey-based research, and we've done it for 30 years, 120,000 people. We've changed our mindset. We used to have an adjective and a noun. You need to be a credible activist, business partner, change agent, paradox navigator. Now, what we found is you have to have a verb. For you to succeed as an HR professional, doing the things we've talked about, you have to be able to accelerate the business. That's interesting. By thinking outside in. You've got to advance human capability. We haven't talked enough about that. Human capability is not only talent, it's also organization and leadership. You've got to advance the knowledge about that. You've got to mobilize information. That's using AI to make better decisions. You've got to foster collaboration, become a partner, collaborate, foster that. And you've got to simplify complexity. Our research, last time we had 28,000 people, that was what we found. Those 5 factors had impact, not just on how you were seen as an HR professional, but how your skills as an HR professional drove business results, financial, and customer and investor results. So you don't have to remember those 5. Here's the headline. It's a verb, not a noun. When you say, what's the skill for a good HR professional? Say, what's the verb? What's the verb? Accelerate business, advance human capability, foster collaboration. Now, we put those together, but think of verbs. I'd love to ask you, if you had to say, this is the set of verbs I want my HR people to know. You knew I was going to ask you a question. What are the verbs that come to your mind?
I mean, I think I can take a really easy way out and say you've just described them, Dave.
Okay.
I think it's basically connecting what we do to the business.
I love the
what
verb.
what are the big business priorities that our organization's got, and let's make sure we spend our time, or most of our time, back to your prioritization point. Let's focus the work that we're doing, or certainly the big investments that we're making in HR. Let's focus on trying to impact those outcomes positively.
I love it. I love it. I thought you'd say analyzing information for impact. I mean, because you were, and it's a verb, being an information source. That's a role. Analyzing information, connecting information. I love the verb because it implies action.
And there's no point analyzing stuff until you know that something's important. So you kind of we can analyze lots of things, but we might find some absolutely amazing stuff, but it might have absolutely no impact. It might not be important. It might not be a problem in the business. So you've also got to find what's the business problem we're trying to solve first, and then I guess you do the analysis afterwards once you've done the prioritization. So
and the only thing I tweak on that is, where does the business problem get defined? And I think it's in the mind of a customer, an investor, or a community. I think so. What's the business problem a customer is trying to get? And if I can get that into my head, then I'm getting the right business problems. And again, HR then is part of that business conversation.
It's part of it's expanding maybe the aperture of the research that we probably currently do mostly in HR functions around the world. It's actually extending it to the customer, to the investor, rather than just the employee or the business leader. I mean, we could probably talk about that. And you mentioned guidance. I know you and your colleagues at the RBL Group have done a lot of work around this. For those listeners that don't maybe know that work well, I don't know if you just want to give a quick synopsis of what you mean by guidance and what you found as well.
Assume you go into a grocery store, large store. There's often 30,000 items. I could probably tell a personal story that's kind of sad, but you don't just walk up and down the aisle saying, well, what strikes me today? Is it bleach? Is it bread? You've got a menu. You've got something in your mind that's saying, this is what I want to get. I'll tell a story. It's kind of sad, but it's more personal. My mom had, as she aged, dementia. So I'd take her to a store and she'd get a basket and she'd walk up and down the aisles and just put random things in the basket. And then I'd put them back. Uh, and I thought, sometimes that's what we do in HR. We just put random things in the basket because they look appealing for whatever reason. What guidance says is, what's the menu that's going to guide what I get in the store? What a simple metaphor. And it applies everywhere. It applies in investment. It applies in school. It applies in restaurants. How do I figure out where to prioritize my focus? That's guidance. And the common guidance is, well, it feels right. I get this warm feeling. That's not a very good measure. And we even try to measure that. How much do you feel committed to this? Why? I think the guidance mechanism, the North Star, if you use Steve Covey's word, is value to the stakeholders. Will this investment create value for my executives who want to deliver strategy, my customers who want to get products, my investors who want financial returns, my communities who want reputation? And when I use the North Star of guidance as the mix of stakeholders, then I know what to pick from the HR supermarket.
And it's back to what you said earlier. If you're a chief people officer who's been given $1 billion to invest in people over the next year, if you can get some good guidance on where to invest that money, you're far more likely to produce a return.
Well, and that's why she said, why am I investing this money to get basket size from 40 to 48? The next year she comes in and says, the average basket size is now 42. Oh, we're going to now give you more because you've proven it. You've demonstrated that you can get a, whatever that is, 5% increase in basket size. Boy, that's a pretty good investment. And I think that's the mindset that if we play, that it gets me excited about what HR has to contribute.
Yeah, it reminds me a bit of the case study in the book, actually. And I know Thomas Rasmussen is someone that you've worked with as well and written a paper with a few years ago around HR or people analytics. And when he was at National Australia Bank, the case study he contributed to the book was they wanted to understand, did employee engagement drive profitability in their branches in National Australia Group in the US, National Australia Bank in Australia. And they found that it did. They found that if you replaced a good leader with a bad leader, attrition would start to go up. So key people would start to leave. The number of safety incidents in the branches would go up, and eventually it would have a knock-on effect on customer engagement and branch profitability. And then they found the opposite was true, that when you replaced a bad leader with a good leader, people would stay longer. That they would be more effective at their jobs effectively, and customer engagement and products and profitability would go up as well. And they were able to check for the direction of causality, and they found it was really coming from leaders and engagement rather than the other way around. And when they revealed that to their executives, of course, then it was like, wow, okay, this is what we need to invest in, because if we do that, then we're going to get the business results that we need as well. So it's just, as you said, it's just being a little bit bolder, a little bit braver, and it's about connecting all the great work we do in HR to what the business is really focused on, as you said, what the customers are really focused on as well, which is they want to go into a bank, they want to get great products and services, they want to get better products and services and be treated better than they may be in another company.
No, Thomas is a great example. He did it at NAB, did it at Shell. I think people like Thomas are a gift to our field because they model what the rest of us need to be learning.
So Dave, a couple more questions before we get to the question of the series. I know you and me could probably talk for 2 hours, but our producers might be so happy. If I could ask you to peer into your crystal ball for a moment, where do you think HR and the world of work will be in the next 10 years? We started with looking back. Let's look forward.
I wish I knew, because I go back 10 years. I could not have predicted from 2000. Think back where you were. Somebody just sent me a picture of myself at 2015. My younger brother. You look the same. I look so different. My weight's gone up and down and a whole bunch of stuff. But I think there are some meta themes. Let me just say out a couple of them. One, I think we're going to get focused on performance. I'm going to do 4 Ps. Let me do 4Ps, top of my head. Performance. It's not what we do, it's the value we get from what we do. A second P is prioritization. I think we're going to continue to see a wealth of opportunity where we can invest. I look at your shows, I look at others who produce research. It's just overwhelming. Consulting firms, research, just so how do you prioritize based on performance? A third P for me is paradox. I think people love to say we're going from operational to strategic. The answer is we're operational and strategic. Every time I see a from to chart, I go, it's and also. And I think we're going to see some amazing paradoxes. AI, technology, and also human insight. We're going to see both, long-term and short-term, top-down, bottom-up, inside-out, and outside-in. I think we're going to learn to live and navigate this incredible paradox, which isn't a new idea. That's Chinese, yin, yang. Great teacher, Jesus, if you believe in teaching. Most of what he taught was paradox. The meek shall inherit the earth. I mean, and so it's not new, but I think we're going to see an incredible amount of paradox. And the final P for me, performance, prioritization, paradox, is personalization. And it's a paradox. I think in a world of rich information, we can personalize decisions and at the same time scale them. So how do I personalize what works for you at this time in your life? If you have teenagers, you've got a different lifestyle. When they're gone, you still personalize. And I think we're going to see technology enable us to personalize. So those are 4 kind of generic trends that I see.
Well, Dave, in 10 years, we'll review, and then we'll go to no, I'm joking.
And we'll look at our picture today and say, that was my younger brother.
Oh, yeah. I do look a lot different than I did 10 years ago. I still have big hair, but apart from that, it's, I look back on pictures.
Yeah, I trade big hair for I trade the big hair for a big belly.
So, yeah. And Dave, is that, and I know you're always working on new initiatives. You talked about your aha moment this year, around looking at spending more time with customers as HR professionals. Is there anything exciting that you're working on at the moment that you'd like to share with listeners?
Let me just list a couple. I think that issue of prioritization is so. We see a preponderance of new products. Every human capital firm is creating new AI solutions. Consulting firms, we're not doing a good enough job with prioritization. We're trying to find a way to do that at scale through AI. We're taking the OGS we did, we're taking G3 we did when we scaled human capital reports from the SEC, and we're trying to create an HR agent that will wander through your data and tell you where to focus. We have a bunch of knowledge warehouses. I'm sure you get asked all the time, can I take all of your content and put it into a warehouse so people can access it? I'm sure everybody's asking you that. You're probably doing it. My question is not that. It's, of all the things David's done in your podcast and your writing, which one should I use to create the most value? Can we find an AI prioritization app? And the other is, how do we reinvent the HR professionals? You're a part of it. I'll be transparent. We've got an incredible advisory board trying to say, where do HR professionals need to go? I don't need to go to a training program that gives me the 6 steps of succession, the 4 elements of performance review. I need to change how HR professionals think and do their work. We're in the process of manipulating that and creating that. And I have 6 words. Can you deliver stakeholder value through human capability? That's the development we're doing. And then define the analytics for that. I got to do one more, and it may be the next question. I'll wait. I'll hold off. Yeah. I'll hold off. That's it.
No, that's two very exciting initiatives straight away there. And I think something else that you mentioned the word hope.
That's where I wanted to go.
We all need a little bit of help at the moment. And that actually is the question of the series. So we're asked on this series of the podcast, we're asking this question, Dave. So I'm teeing you up here, hopefully, for that. How can HR use AI? And maybe it's not AI, maybe it's other things. How can HR improve employee experience and well-being? What should we be focused on?
Employee experience and well-being is not new. We used to call it motivation. We called it satisfaction, commitment, engagement. Our view is, I love the metaphor of hope, because hope is focused on the future. It's about what you can become. It's efficacy. If I work, I can achieve this. It's optimism. It's what's right, not what's wrong. And it can be generated. The work on this comes out of a brilliant psychologist, Marty Seligman. He's the father of positive psychology, all the looking at what's right stuff. He did a lot of work on helplessness, learned helplessness. You learn how to be helpless. Now he's writing a lot about hopefulness. How do you develop a sense of hope? Do you have efficacy? If you work, will you accomplish it? Do you have optimism about what the future holds? Are you feeling inspired to reach your goals? I think what we're going to see with the AI is helping employees personalize their pathway to hope. How do I find hope from my work? And it may be a very different pathway. It may be working in an office. It may be working out of an office. Where you work is not going to matter. What you work on may matter. How you work. And how do you help people find a sense of hope and flourishing, Seligman's words, in the work setting? I'm excited about that. And this is the translation. I love translations. Somebody said, you don't just have seminaries, you have churches, but you have Sunday school. Here's the Sunday school simple lesson. When an employee leaves an interaction with you as a leader, do they feel better or worse about themselves? What a simple question. That's the hope question. I can do all the statistics, all the analytics, all the behaviors of leadership. When I leave an interaction with you, do I feel better or worse about myself? And that feeling better is hope. Do they make me hopeful? That's the agenda that I'm excited about. We're trying to understand that. What are the skills of hope? And how do you begin to embed that into organizations as well as leaders?
No, I mean, hope's such a powerful word. I mean, I don't know. One of my favorite films of all time is The Shawshank Redemption. I'm not sure you've seen it.
Oh, it's a great movie.
Didn't do that well at the cinema when it first came out, but it was almost like kept growing, and it became a word of mouth film. And they did some analysis into, I don't know, I can't remember the whole story here. They did some analysis of what is it about the Shawshank Redemption that made it just this continue to grow and grow. And not many people who watched it that I've met at least don't like it. And they said because it's about hope.
Nice.
The whole film is, when you actually strip it away, is about hope, and it's basically the hope of Andy Dufresne to get out of prison and to be on that beach in Mexico, and it is a powerful film, and hope is a powerful.
Well, and those who are watching this, I have in my office pictures of people: Martin Luther King, Sheikh Zayed, my wife, my father. Why do I have those pictures? Because they give me hope. These are people who preached hope. I mean, I'll use another religious metaphor. Some prophets tell people they're on the way to hell if they don't repent. Other prophets tell people what heaven looks like and help them get there. I think hope is the second one. By the way, the first one's fair too, but I'd rather Martin Luther King, Sheikh Zayed, my father taught me hope, that the future, the best is yet ahead. Build for that future and look forward. And I love that. Now, how do you get the skills of that? We could give everybody the movie to watch and they could all talk about what happened in getting out of prison and discovering innocence. But I think feeling inspired and inspiring hope in that future through efficacy, through optimism, through agency, through choice, that begins to be what I hope AI can do for the employee.
Well, final question, Dave. And this is really on us, really, to see what we should have asked you. What is the question I should have asked you today but didn't?
Let me tell you what I'm frustrated with, and I'm going to ask you, because why aren't we making more progress? Why aren't we making more progress? We being the HR field. I read your work. I read Nicholas's work. I read volume. We know what to do, and we're still tweaking it. We're getting better to do it. I'm trying to do that. You are in your work with Jonathan and others. So why are ideas not having the impact they should? That's the one I'm struggling with a little bit. Do you have any thoughts, Al?
I wish I had the answer to that. I think we started off. I think the role of being the chief people officer, and then by extension a senior HR leader, I think it's just getting tougher. I think you've got so much being thrown at you all the time, inside the organization, outside the organization, particularly perhaps at the moment. And I think it comes down to a word that you mentioned, actually, prioritization. It's hard to prioritize because everything is important. So what do you decide not to do? And I guess that's where your concept around guidance comes in. You need some help to work out what's not quite as important as the other things. And I think things are, again, something else you mentioned at the start, Dave, things are happening so quickly. They seem to be happening so quickly that it's almost like every day something new happens, and we have to move the ship over here, and then something happens, we have to move it back. So I do think that people are working not everyone, but most people are working incredibly hard, incredibly long hours, and it's incredibly
That's fair.
complex.
That's
Back
fair.
to your paradox one as well. So your P's, I think, are the right P's as well. But based on that.
Yeah, I just struggle because I've been in the field for a while, and
Mm,
I think we are we're making progress. I think if you look at a conference in 2015 and a conference today, I think we get better topics. I think we're seeing more, but I just wish we could move faster. I sometimes wonder, and I love your stuff, prioritization. We're overwhelmed. I
yeah.
might add to that. I see sometimes HR people being afraid. They're afraid to act. They're afraid to act with courage. One of the most talented senior HR leaders I've ever worked with, I asked her recently, as part of the group you're a part of, what do we need to do to make HR progress? Her word was courage. We need to imbue ourselves in HR with courage. That means replace fear with
Yeah.
confidence. Step up to it, even if you don't have an answer. Move forward. Anyway, I'm in the middle of thinking about that. How do we help create HR professionals who will drive this forward? And then you say, so why? And this is why I continue to have passion about HR. I did a talk recently about 100 senior HR leaders. It was through webinar. At the end of the talk, the host came on and said, do you realize that these 100 senior
Mm,
HR leaders represent 900,000 employees? And sometimes people say, why do you stay active in HR when you're getting older, obviously? Why do you keep doing this? Where else in the world could the ideas that we share affect 900,000
mm.
employees? I mean, this is the emotional hope that I come with, that the best is yet ahead, that what you do in your incredibly good monthly reviews, your podcast, your books, your articles, if we can move the needle even a little bit, the leverage is incredible. That was one group in a state in Texas, in the U.S., across the world. If your work can help the HR people shape the employee experience, hope, personalization, whatever you want to call it, just a little, I think we've made a difference. So that's what I'm trying to do. And I think you join me on that journey. I mean, I think that's a journey we care about. This isn't just, put in my time, how many hours till I retire. No, this is mission driven in a very powerful way.
Well, the field's very grateful, Dave, that you are still doing it and helping shape the way forward for us as well. As ever, it's always an absolute pleasure to talk with you, and always learn so much. And I can feel the passion and the energy and the knowledge coming through the video screen as well. Thank you. How can people, if anyone on this podcast, who's listening to this podcast, isn't already following you on social media, how can they get in touch with you, and maybe tell them a little bit about your LinkedIn newsletter as well, and maybe how they can find out more about the work you're doing at the RBL Group?
Yeah, that's great. When COVID hit, I'd been traveling 150 flights a year. Well, 200 flights a year, every 4 or 5 flights a week. Not traveling. What am I going to do? And it hit me. I got to learn to use social media, and that wasn't my preference. I mean, people used to tell me, "You have a face for radio." So I started social media. I am finding LinkedIn a delightful platform. There are others. So I started posting every Tuesday. That's not easy. You would appreciate that. You got to write a 1,200 word essay every Tuesday that has something useful to say. I don't know how you review all of that stuff, and I started posting. And then I found the comments are fantastic. Now, there's always a few outliers. I shouldn't confess this. There are a couple of people I've just deleted. They want to make political debates. If you want to debate politically, I'll do that, but not here. I really love the comments. I love the comments. This isn't about likes. It's about learning. It's about comments. And somebody said, do you really make all those comments? The answer is yes. Look at the typos. I spend probably an hour or two a day. LinkedIn is my forum for learning. And why I love it is I almost never look at who the responder is. I love that part of AI. This could be a 25-year-old student in Sri Lanka. This could be a CHRO in Germany. I care less about the title and more about the quality of thinking. And I'm amazed, David, as you've learned through your work, there are some great thinkers in this field around the world. And LinkedIn is my platform. So I hope you'll follow me. I can't believe the impact it's having. We get, anyway, a lot of views, a lot of comments. So do you. I follow you voraciously. It's just amazing. You'll post something, you'll have and I don't see how many views you get, but you'll have 100 comments within 12 hours. And I just think it's fascinating to see that platform.
Yeah, it's a very powerful platform, and long may that continue. As you said, let's keep the politics off LinkedIn. We've got other platforms that if that's our preference. Dave, thank you so much for being a guest again on the show, and also for the kind words that you've expressed about the work that we're doing at Insight 222 and about the work I'm doing as well. It's very kind of you. So thank you.
Thank you. What a marvelous thing. The best is yet ahead, and we're on a shared journey. Thank you so much, David.
In this series, we will be speaking to a range of senior leaders who are pushing a data-driven and digital HR agenda. Make sure that you subscribe via your podcast app of choice and also via our YouTube channel for free and regular interviews with the digital HR leaders of the future.